violence and other kind of violence.
Get away! I could be at work, at school, in my car, and I can still get shot by the police. But I can get shot anywhere.
So it is what it is.
I'm here on the corner of MLK and Medgar Evers, and it's a very tranquil scene compared to just a couple hours ago where a drive-by shooting just took place. Excuse me, I'm getting live updates as we speak. I've just been updated to the amount of casualties from this drive-by shooting, and I'm getting reports that 2 people were actually declared deceased and 27 others were shot and injured but are in stable condition. And although we must pray for the families of the fallen, we must also praise God for the aim of the super gremlin. If you want to know more about the victims of this crime, make sure you add BGZM News 17 on Patreon at www.patreon.com/blackgenzmindset. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and comment on the video to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this gun violence in the streets. For more hard-hitting news coverage from the community, by the community, I'm Quornelius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17.
And cut.
All right, dog. Let's get the out of here before these niggas come back.
Whoa. Yo. Ain't that nigga J?
Nah, that ain't me. That ain't me.
He just went live.
That ain't
with
me.
Funky ass
That's
that nigga.
That's not me.
Hey, get that nigga.
Quornelius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia. Pray for me. What's good, Shadow Realm? It's your boy Quornelius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time. What's good, Shadow Realm? It's a Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you go ahead and like, comment, share, subscribe, and let's get into the video. Oh, man. This is not good. We have another mass shooting coming out of Georgia, and unfortunately, it is a brother, okay? We have to talk about this. We have a mass shooting at Fort Stewart. 5 people were injured. Thankfully, no deaths. So we don't have any casualties in this shooting. But, you know, it just goes to show that God was watching over this military base today and over our soldiers who serve valiantly. And unfortunately, we had a soldier that went AWOL. We have a soldier that completely crashed out. We have a soldier that turned into a super gremlin on demon time. And this is friendly fire. We have a soldier that committed one of the gravest sins that you can commit on a military base as a active duty, military personnel, right? I mean, this is absolutely crazy, and it all happened earlier today. We are going to get right into it. We have 11 alive with the scoop. We're just kind of going to bounce around with the reporting. There is no chronological order, but we're going to get as much information as possible. So let's get into it.
Continue following breaking news out of South Georgia, where a sergeant is accused of shooting 5 fellow soldiers this morning at Fort Stewart.
We are now getting a first look at the suspected shooter. This is a photo of 28-year-old Quornelius Radford.
Damn. Squinch face Quornelius. And it looks like, you know, he was pretty upset about something. I mean, he took this mugshot like, fuck it. Fuck it. I mean, what type of charges is he about to rack up? Because she's shooting on a military base at active duty officers. All that stuff, man. All that stuff. I mean, this is absolutely ridiculous. Shout out to T Sims, who sent the $5 toward the new hard drive.
Oh, say less.
You already know what it is, man. Appreciate that, T Sims. We are definitely gonna rack it up, get a new hard drive. With you guys' help, we are going to improve the quality of the show bit by bit. I have been monetized, so money coming in, man. Money coming in. It ain't much. It's not much. Okay, don't get crazy. I still need y'all donations, like Dr. Umar. I still need y'all donations, and I ain't too proud to beg. So, you know, hit the Cash App, hit the Super Trap, hit the PayPal, show some support to the BGZM News 17 network. We're trying to go big with this network, man. BGZM News 17. I mean, think about that. I mean, it just sounds cool, right? BGZM News 17. Like, couldn't y'all see me like as a news anchor? This is just in BGZM News 17 reporting on the madness in the community. A mass shooting at Fort Stewart. But seriously, man, Quornelius Radford, and he didn't spell Cornelius the typical way that we see Cornelius spelled. He spelled Cornelius the whole ghetto ratchet way. All right, his mama says she don't give a damn. She said, nigga, you ain't getting no job. We gonna make them think your name is Quornelius. Because you take a quick glance at it, Quornelius Radford, I bet the substitute teacher was having a field day with that. Didn't even know how to pronounce it. Quornelius Radford. Is Quornelius Radford in? It's Cornelius. But yeah, present. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's I mean, I understand the concept of the name, but she was like, let me just take the white version of it and turn it black. Just put a QUO in front of that bitch and we good. Oh, God.
From a previous arrest in Liberty County, Georgia. This from May. Army leaders say other troops tackled Radford after he started shooting. Zach Wilcox is...
Damn. So other troops tackled him as he started shooting. I mean, shout out to those brave soldiers there, ready and willing to run into the line of fire. You got Cornelius, squint face Cornelius. It looked like he damn near got Down syndrome, honestly. Down syndrome and a receding hairline. Lord have mercy. Help us.
Reporting on what else we've learned so far today.
We now know the name of the suspect, Sergeant Quornelius Radford, for the shooting that injured 5 people at Fort Stewart behind me here. This is the front gate. I'll step out here as I give you some more of the details that you can look as cars start to matriculate their way back onto the base after it was locked down for several hours earlier this morning and into the early afternoon. We found out from a commander general of the base that Sergeant Radford worked at an annex at the farthest part of the base from where we are now, really way up at the north end, and that the shooting involved where he worked on the base and people that he worked with. However, they would not go into any kind of motive. That's still under investigation at this point. But the 5 injured, we know that 3 were taken. They needed some sort of surgery after the shooting, but all 5 are expected to recover and their families have been notified at this point. And the Commander General gave us an update as to what's going to be going on next.
Sergeant Radford has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special.
And you don't want to be in no military prison. You do not want to be in no military prison or holding cell or jail or whatever. I mean, just think about it. I mean, imagine what they'd be doing to terrorists. So, I mean, Buddy completely crashed out. Shot on his fellow servicemen. I mean, this is like hardcore mode in Black Ops 6. You know, you go to hardcore mode and then like your own rounds can affect your own team. And you're not shooting them on purpose, but you know, they might get in the line of fire or whatever. But that's a video game. We're talking about real life here. And you got the man, he just, boom, something switch flipped on in his head, turned on his fellow serviceman. I mean, imagine that. You're at the range, you're shooting with, it reminds me of that movie American Sniper. You know what I'm saying? Where the guy goes and he gets killed by, at the end of the movie, he gets, after doing all this epic stuff in the military and, you know, taking a shot from miles away, he gets killed by some veterans who he was trying to help out, who had maybe mental issues or had injuries from the military. And this is how things kind of roll here. Shout out to Scott Kelly with the $5 super trap.
Oh, say less.
He says, outstanding content. Glad he is in custody. And yes, we are all glad, elated even, that this super gremlin on Demon Time is in custody. And thank you, Roger W., for that. Yes, Chris Kyle, the Navy SEAL expert sniper who came back from multiple deployments and tried to help his fellow servicemen, and only to go to the range to be snuffed out by some coward, you know, limp dick, bullshit ass, veteran. In this case, you have this guy here who crashed out on his own servicemen, and thankfully there were other people around to tackle him and stop him from shooting up this whole military base. But I really am interested in his motives. I'm seriously interested in his motives, and they're keeping that under wraps. The military, they have a very strict policy. They're not really letting any information get out at all. So we're trying to get as much as we can on this story. We're going to have to rely on the news, and it looks like, guys, this is something that we don't normally see, but it looks like the mainstream has taken a liking to this story. We got CNN reporting on this story. So that, for one, they probably thought it was some white guy shooting up the military base. Let's keep it a buck. They hopped onto the story. They picked it up. They went live on it. They made all these pieces on it. And then, boom, his identity is revealed. And we'll see how long this story lasts. This is a thing. This is a dilemma here. Like, we obviously, in the community, we don't want people who do negative things to represent us, but we also need a light shined on these negative things because it's just something that we need to be aware of, take more notice to, so that we can get at the root causes. And I know we hate those phrases, the root causes, but I mean, it's really just the home, the house training. What's happening at home? What situation is this guy running from? Who pissed him off, and why doesn't he have control over his temper?
Trial counsel. Right now, our primary focus is first on caring for our injured soldiers and their families, and also supporting the soldiers of the Spartan Brigade.
I asked after the briefing if Sergeant Radford had any injuries from the shooting, and they said that is unclear at this point. You can see that the front gate here to Fort Stewart has reopened, and all those lockdowns have been lifted. At Fort Stewart, Zach Wilcox.
And we are hearing from witnesses who were nearby when the shooting happened. A truck driver, Ron Peavy, says he had just dropped off a delivery at Fort Stewart and was trying to leave when he says everything stopped. He says that he was then told to turn his 18-wheeler around and wait at the base commissary.
It was when we were walking back to the vehicles is when he also announced, okay, hold on, it's over. You guys can leave now. But nobody knew. The base just turned into a ghost town for almost an hour, and there was no warnings, no sirens. Nobody knew what was going on.
Woo!
Peavy says he waited there for more than 30 minutes as law enforcement vehicles whizzed by.
We are continuing to stay on top of this breaking news.
Wow, man. So I know this was a very scary scene for the people in the area. So, you know, it's wild that they did have to go through this very tragic event here. But, you know, this guy, he was apprehended. So everybody's safe now. But it just doesn't feel safe, does it? It just doesn't feel safe. It doesn't feel safe in the community. It doesn't feel safe, you know, outside. Doesn't feel safe in these military bases now. And that's not a good thing. That is not a good thing. I mean, this dude completely went AWOL. And I know they put you through some tough training in the military. You know, he might have had somebody screaming down his throat. He got upset by it. Somebody checked him, made him, you know, clean the floors with a toothbrush. He said, oh, hell no, I ain't doing this shit. Damn, but I wonder what it was. Or maybe he was politically radicalized. Maybe this was an attempted act of terrorism. Now that I mean, I'm not hearing that, but that could, you know, have been a motive. That's very much what, you know, it feels like when you see the headline, oh, mass shooter at, you know, at military base. It makes you think, oh, this is a terrorist attack. So.
I'm Bradley Warren, tracking breaking news here on The Pulse. We do now have an update out of Georgia. The person accused of shooting at people at Fort Stewart near coastal Georgia this morning has been identified. He is someone who has injured 5 soldiers. He's been identified as Quornelius Radford, a 28-year-old Army sergeant with ties to Florida. An Army spokesperson just spoke with reporters at a press conference. I want to take you to a few of the remarks that the spokesperson had to say.
The shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly.
A spokesperson with the Army says that the weapons used were likely personal and not ones issued by the military. You just heard there.
Okay, so he did use a personal firearm instead of one issued by the military. So, I mean, it doesn't really change the difference. He shot 5 people, but I guess that's good since he didn't have, you know, a highly powered weapon.
No word right now on the motive for the shooting, and the names of those who were shot have not yet been shared. We do know that it sounds like
Damn, shout out to King Yeti. He says, my homie's son-in-law was on the base. He was on lockdown for hours, man. So thankfully he is safe and not in harm's way.
5 people shot are currently in the hospital recovering right now.
Wow. Man, Quornelius, why you have to do him like that? Lord have mercy. Let's see if we can find any. Oh, we got a whole bunch of people, man. We got a whole bunch of different videos in investigative journalism for this story here to share with you guys. I hate when the screen does that. So let's go to NBC Chicago. They are reporting on this. Damn, man, it's just getting worse for niggas, ain't it, bruh? It's just getting worse. The national image of black people is just getting sullied by these super gremlins. I mean, it really is, you know? They're coming up with all different types of terms like black fatigue and all this. Somebody said in the comments, lactose intolerant. Like, damn. Yo, man, I mean, And it's just something I continue to speak about in the community. They don't want to hear it. I've been saying this for the longest. There's going to be a backlash, and we're not going to have any, we're not going to have any ability to fight against this because we haven't held each other accountable, and we haven't done the necessary work internally from a familial structure to make sure that, our kids are coming out sane and have the impulse control and are able to, participate in society. And obviously this is a small percentage of the community, but there's a large percent of the community who condones, encourages, reinforces all of these negative behaviors that make excuses for even. It's crazy.
We begin here at 4 o'clock with a developing story. 5 soldiers are hurt after a shooting at a military post in Georgia. It happened at Fort Stewart near Savannah. Fort Stewart is one of the largest Army installations in the country.
The suspected shooter, an Army sergeant, is now in custody. NBC5 investigator Chuck Gowdy is joining us with what we have learned about him today. Chuck?
Alex Marion, after the Army post attack this morning, Fort Stewart still a law enforcement hot zone. No longer an active shooter situation, the gunman in custody, but with at least 5 soldiers shot and wounded at one of the nation's largest military bases. Authorities are trying to figure out how and why a 28-year-old Army sergeant from Florida would have opened fire on his colleagues. Here's what we know. The good news, all 5 wounded soldiers expected to survive, 3 of them following surgery. The attack suspect, now identified as 2nd Brigade Sergeant Quornelius Radford, his first name spelled with the letter Q. Investigators say Radford used his own personal pistol.
Damn, he knew people were going to search his name. They ended up saying first name, start with a letter Q. Damn, his mama really did him in with that name.
To shoot 5 co-workers, they say violating facility rules by bringing a non-military handgun to work. A weapons trace now underway by federal firearms investigators and military police to determine where the gun came from and how he got it. A short time ago, Fort Stewart Brigadier General John Lubis with some details.
The shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly. Soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
This photo of the suspected shooter, 28-year-old Quornelius Radford, is from an arrest for driving under the influence. Military officials say that DUI was not reported to Radford's superiors, and such an offense typically means severe consequences under military justice, many times including expulsion from the service. Fort Stewart, about 40 miles from Savannah, Georgia, on full lockdown for about an hour during the shooting event. This afternoon, authorities are also examining access point security at the Army facility with questions about how a soldier could smuggle a personal weapon onto the grounds. Privately owned weapons are not allowed past the main gate. Most employees at facilities are not armed even with military weapons. Alex?
Seems like a few things were missed here, Chuck. Thank you for the details. We appreciate it.
Damn. Let's see what more information we can pull up on this story. Damn, it's just not good, man. Not good. This is bad news, Jack. Bad news.
Conditions now of the soldiers who were taken to Savannah. Christina Burgess from our sister station, First Coast News, has more.
Yeah, we do know that 2 out of the 5 soldiers who were wounded on Fort Stewart arrived here at Memorial University Medical Center. Those soldiers arrived by an ambulance ride that took around 30 minutes from Fort Stewart's military base. Now, this center is a level 1 trauma center, meaning that medical staff are trained to respond quick and fast. This is also the only level 1 trauma center from Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. Around 3 p.m. today, Dr. William William Bromberg with the center came out and briefed the media, and he told us that soldiers are in good hands with this staff.
We are expected to have a very vast array of resources ready before the call comes in. So when we get a call, we get a phone call that says they're coming in 15 minutes. And they all are expected to be waiting for the trauma patient before that person hits the door.
And this hospital is in Savannah, Georgia, which is also in a well-known military community. Again, those 2 soldiers are being treated here at Memorial University Medical Center, and the other 3 are being treated at the Wynn Army Medical Hospital, which is located on Fort Stewart's military base. In Savannah, Georgia, Christina Burgess.
We'll continue to keep you updated there.
Damn. So we do have some updates from the medical staff here. So we'll get into that as well. He's giving us an update on all 5, I believe. So here we go.
I'm Lydia.
Hey there, Bill.
It's great to meet you, Bill. And what's your title here?
I'm an attending trauma surgeon. I've been here since
Okay.
my fellowship in 2000.
With Dr. William Bromberg. He is a trauma surgeon here at Memorial. And Dr. Bromberg, I know you just said it, but can you tell us a little bit about your background here at Memorial?
Sure. My name is Bill Bromberg. I'm an attending trauma surgeon, which means I've completed a general surgery residency and then advanced training in trauma and critical care. I've been here since my fellowship since 2002. So I'm actually the longest practicing trauma surgeon here at Memorial right now. And what we do is we take care of the critically ill and injured patients. If the normal ER doctors think they need to be admitted or they're sicker than the normal ER doctor sees, we're sort of like the next step for the critically ill and injured patient.
Dr. Bromberg, I know that you can't talk specifically about the patients that you have here from Fort Stewart, but we know that a great deal goes into preparing to take on critical patients like those patients from Fort Stewart likely are. Can you walk us through the process of what y'all go through when you get a call that you have gunshot victims coming in is?
Absolutely. And that
So he's talking about the process as to which they go through when they get a GSW gunshot wound victim into Memorial Health University Medical Center. And, you may not be able to hear the reporter, so I just want to repeat the question.
that's really what sets a trauma center apart from non-trauma hospitals that have emergency departments. We are expected to have a very vast array of resources ready before the call comes in. So when we get a call, whether it's a gunshot wound or somebody fell off a ladder and the EMS people think they're critically injured, we get a phone call that says they're coming in 15 minutes. At that time, that phone call goes out to an attending trauma surgeon, a critical care fellow who is a resident completing more training, 2 surgery residents, usually a surgery nurse practitioner, 2 specially trained ER nurses, a respiratory therapist, a radiology tech, and a pharmacist. And they all are expected to be waiting for the trauma patient before that person hits the door. So you can imagine how much resources have to be put into that and how much preparation. We also have blood available in the emergency department in a cooler right there, so we can give people blood instantly if we need it. Our blood bank can give us the next 6 units of blood within 20 minutes of that person rolling in the door, with us having the first 2 units available immediately. So here's a plug, guys. Give blood. We need it. So go out there and give blood. What else can I tell you about our trauma system?
I'll ask you a quick question. If you're just joining us now, you can't tell us any specifics about their condition in there, but tell me what it's like when it comes to treating somebody that is a service member. Is there a heavy weight that comes with that? Treating somebody who has signed up to serve our country? I know you treat everybody the same, but there's got to be a different feel in that ER right now.
Absolutely. Savannah is well known to be a military community. Our program director, our trauma program director, my boss basically, completed a naval career prior to becoming our trauma director here. And we've always had a very deep connection with the military. It adds a couple of things. There's usually more people to talk to. right? The commanders are allowed to ask some details that like other, if your boss came and asked the stuff we couldn't tell you, so we have to talk to multi-level people. We also get a great deal of support. They all come in with a buddy, so there's always somebody there with them, which is real touching for us. But yeah, we really care about our military.
And being the only level 1 trauma center here in the area, what does that mean when things like this incidents of this magnitude happen? How does that affect your staff and your readiness, and you guys being the only ones who can do the job?
Well, we have to be available all the time, and we have to have the resources there all the time, which it costs money. I mean, that's really you imagine all those people just being ready and waiting. We do other stuff between traumas. We take care of the patients that are already admitted, but really it's a great deal of resources that are in preparation. We are the only trauma center between Charleston, Jacksonville, and Macon. That is a huge catchment area. And people come in from across the street, and people come in from hours away, and we have to be there for everybody. And the number of our major traumas has gone up since when I came here 20 years ago. We did 1,200 major trauma admissions a year, about 2,000 admissions. Like they're not really sick enough to be called trauma, but they get admitted to trauma service. We're up to over 2,500 major traumas last year and almost 4,000 total admissions. So it's as the population grows, so does the number of people that get hurt, and we're there to provide that service to the community.
Thank you.
Over the past couple of weeks, we've had a shooting at Oglethorpe Mall that required people to be treated here at Memorial. We've had this shooting on Fort Stewart today. You and your staff and everybody that works in this emergency room to treat gunshot victims, is there any, are they tired of having to treat gunshot victims? I don't mean in the sense that they don't want to do it anymore, but is there any frustration seeing this continually come through your emergency room?
Well, it's always sad. We would all love to be able to, like me, I'd love to go teach scuba diving. That would be my dream, right? If no more people got injured, I could find something to do. That being said, gunshots often and of the type we see are young. It's just really sad, and we would like to do everything we can to prevent that. We are involved in the violence interdiction program, where we try to cut the cycle of violence when you have a shooting that may be gang related, to try to go out and prevent the cycle of shootings. So we're involved in that stuff, and that's one of the things that level 1 trauma centers have to do, is be part of trauma prevention programs, and we're very proud of that. So yeah, I would absolutely love it if people would stop shooting each other.
And specifically treating a gunshot wound, today, what we're assuming might be some gunshot wounds as well as, incidents we've seen in the last couple of weeks. What specifically goes into that?
Well, honestly, treating gunshot wounds can be the type of injury that requires the most technical expertise, but the least amount of thought, right? If you are in a bad car accident, you can be injured and us not really see it. It can all be invisible and inside and internal bleeding. Gunshot wounds, honestly, you can think about it as there's a hole, sorry. Everything in between those holes has a hole in it. And you literally need to stop the bleeding or sew up any leakage of any other things that could be leaking, like your intestines and stuff. So it's actually, it can require good technical expertise, right? Somebody's bleeding to death, you have to stop that bleeding right away. But honestly, it's almost the least amount of mental exercise that we have to do. And we are very good at stopping that bleeding. So patients that hit the trauma bay door, if we know they're coming, we meet them at the door, they can get blood within 2 to 5 minutes if they need it, and we can get them into the operating room and operating on them in less than 15 minutes, which is a requirement for a trauma center. So we can really do that quickly. We're very good at that. And that's really what it entails. It's deciding right away if somebody's bleeding enough or has something injured that needs an operation, and getting them from the trauma bay, where we do that assessment, to the operating room where we actually fix the problem as fast as we can in a safe manner.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. We just want to thank you for all you're doing for those service members inside. I definitely noticed your emotion earlier, and we all feel that in a moment like this. So thank you so much for being here with us and coming out to speak with us. We'll let you get back to work inside.
No problem.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we'll have some more news about the actual patients later when we know more.
Absolutely. We'll be looking to you for that. So thank you so much. You're just now joining us. You heard us speak to a doctor here at Memorial Health.
Oh yeah, he was ready for that. He was ready for that interview. All right. Let's see if we can. They're saying questions arise. Let's see if we watched that one already. I think we haven't watched this one. I want to hear from some witnesses too, so we'll get to the witness testimony soon.
4 o'clock with a developing story. 5 soldiers are hurt after a shooting at a military post in Georgia. It happened at Fort Stewart near Savannah. Fort Stewart is one of the largest Army installations in the country.
The suspected shooter, an Army sergeant, is now in custody. NBC5 investigator Chuck Gowdy is joining us with what we have learned about him today. Chuck?
Alex Marion, after the Army post attack this morning, Fort Stewart still a law enforcement hot zone. No longer an active shooter situation, the gunman in custody, but with at least 5 soldiers shot and wounded at one of the nation's largest military bases. Authorities are trying to figure out how and why a 28-year-old Army sergeant from Florida would have opened fire on his colleagues. Here's what we know. The good news, all 5 wounded soldiers expected to survive, 3 of them following surgery. The attack suspect, now identified as 2nd Brigade Sergeant Quornelius Radford, his first name spelled with the letter Q. Investigators say Radford used his own personal pistol.
Oh, we already watched this one. All right, let me move on to this one. This was actually, I guess, when they were giving us live updates. So let's see how they were reporting on it.
And that breaking news alert comes from Fort Stewart, Georgia. Let's listen in. 5 soldiers were shot earlier today. The shooter's been arrested. Let's listen in.
In just a moment, I'm going to introduce you to Brigadier General John Lubis. That's spelled John, Lubis, Lubas. He's the commanding general of the 3rd Infantry Division. Brigadier General Lubis will make a statement regarding the incident and take a few brief questions. Before we begin, however, I'd like to go over just a couple things with you. We have limited time for questions, given that this is an ongoing investigation, and we may not have all the information that we can share, but we will try to be as transparent as possible. We will not release the name of any victims until the next of kin notification has been complete. We will not speculate as to any intentions, motives, or backstories, given that this is an ongoing investigation. When you ask your questions, we ask that you please give your name and the affiliation in case we need to do a follow-up. And it's a little hard to hear, so please speak up so that General Lubis can hear you and that you can hear him. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I will now turn it over to General Lubis.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for joining us. This morning, shortly before 11 o'clock, an active duty soldier assigned to Fort Stewart, Georgia, shot and wounded 5 of his fellow soldiers here on Fort Stewart. Thankfully, all are in stable condition and all are expected to recover. The alleged shooter is in custody. We have reestablished security. I have lifted all lockdown measures on Fort Stewart, and there is currently no threat to the local community. I'd like to recognize and thank our Army law enforcement and medical personnel and our partners from local, state, and federal law enforcement and emergency services for their quick response and support. I would also like to thank the brave soldiers who immediately intervened and subdued the shooter. These soldiers, without a doubt, prevented further casualties. Our wounded soldiers were initially evacuated to Wynn Army Community Hospital right here on Fort Stewart. All arrived in stable condition, and 3 of the 5 required surgical intervention. 2 have been transported to Memorial Hospital in Savannah, Georgia for additional care. We have identified the alleged shooter as Sergeant Quornelius Radford, an automated logistics sergeant assigned to 2nd Brigade Combat Team. Sergeant Radford has not previously deployed to combat. Sergeant Radford has been interviewed by the Army Criminal Investigation Division and is currently in pretrial confinement, awaiting a charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. Right now, our primary focus is first on caring for our injured soldiers and their families, and also supporting the soldiers of the Spartan Brigade. All of the families of the victims have been notified, and we're wrapping our arms around them and ensuring we provide them all the support that we can. Before I take questions, I want to remind you that this is an ongoing investigation and we're still gathering questions. And ladies and gentlemen, I'll now take your questions.
General Lewis Levine, Coastal News. Can you give us his, what unit he was assigned to and how long he served in the Army? I believe if you didn't mention it.
Yeah, he is assigned to one of our sustainment units here in 2nd Brigade Combat Team at Fort Stewart. And I will have to confirm how long he served with us. Yes, sir.
Russ Bynum with the Associated Press. As best you can, knowing it's still early, can you walk us through where this happened, what happened in the shooting, and were the victims subordinates of the sergeants, or were they people over him in rank?
Yeah, right now it's premature, and we're gathering a lot of the information. What we know is this soldier, the shooting occurred at the soldier's place of work. It did involve his co-workers. We're still not certain about the motivations, but again, he's been interviewed by Army investigators, and we believe we'll gain more information here shortly. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. We don't have any reason to believe it had anything to do with a training event. Other than that, I can't state the motivations for this soldier.
We've heard that the shooter
Yes,
may
sir.
have been from Jacksonville, Florida. Are you able to confirm that? We also heard that he had maybe been arrested for DUI recently.
Yeah, at this point, I can't confirm where he's from. We can follow up on that. I do believe he was arrested locally for a DUI that was unknown to his chain of command until the event occurred, and we started looking into the law enforcement databases.
Robin, now from the current, can you tell us whether or not that was a military weapon or whether this is a personal weapon that the person brought on stage?
Yes, ma'am. I can confirm it was not a military weapon, and we believe it was a personal handgun. Yes, sir.
What does this mean for ongoing security measures?
Yeah, I'm very confident in the security of this installation. We've got a great partnership with local law enforcement. As you can see here at our gates, we have armed guards in protective equipment. This one's a bit difficult, and we're going to have to determine how he was able to get a handgun to his place of duty.
WTOA News for Jack. Has the suspect had any prior disciplinary or behavioral issues on base?
No, ma'am, not that we're aware of. But again, it's early in the investigation.
Damn. So they're saying he had no prior disciplinary issues that they're aware of, at least.
But not that I'm currently aware of. I don't have the details on that, but I know that his soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
And we've got time for one more question.
I know that you can't speak to the motivation, but if this turns out to be some situation where somebody had extremist beliefs or maybe classified as a terrorist attack, I mean, how does that change the basis response or the basis investigation moving forward?
Yeah, currently we have no reason to believe any of that is the case. However, we continuously assess the threat environment, both in the immediate area and across our Army and DoD installations, and we will address the threat level accordingly. Yes, sir. He was a sergeant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your questions. And again, thanks to the local responders and the local community for their help. Thanks and have a great afternoon.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you've just been listening to the Brigadier General talking about this active.
So we got the Savannah mayor speaking about this, which is very interesting here. The Savannah mayor is actually a brother, so I did not see this coming. But here we go. We got the Savannah mayor giving his take on this mass shooting.
The mayor of Savannah, Georgia, Van Johnson, again, Savannah, just about an hour away from this military installation where this shooting has occurred. And Mayor, welcome in. Thank you for joining us. Our condolences to your community, sir.
Thank you so much. Fort Stewart community is very near and dear to us.
Yeah, describe that relationship for us. So Fort Stewart, just about an hour outside of your city, but we've heard tell that it is a sprawling military installation, 10,000 or so people there, from soldiers to their families to civilian contractors. How tied into the Savannah community is it?
Well, Fort Stewart is the larger part of a joint compound. Fort Stewart, which is in Hinesville in Liberty County, and Hunter Army Airfield, which is actually in Savannah. They have a joint command, and so our soldiers are very dear to us. They are residents. They are community members, and many of them, after they retire, continue living in our community.
And are we right to say that it's just about an hour away from Savannah, Fort Stewart?
About 40 minutes.
So about 40 minutes, less than an hour away. I guess my question to you, Mayor, is have you ever, and the answer can be no here because we're in breaking news coverage. Have you ever been to this Fort Stewart?
All of the time. I'm in that area weekly.
So describe to us the level of security typically to get into a base like this. Again, a U.S. official describes the suspect here as a soldier who presumably had access to the base, but just for a member of the general public to get in, what kind of security is it like there?
I have always been very impressed with the level of security at Hunter and Fort Stewart. They have gates there with not only active duty law enforcement, but also private security that check ID. And you can't get on that base without an ID. If you're a soldier or if you have some business there or you're a retiree, but otherwise you just can't come onto that base.
So, Mayor, what has been the reaction in the Savannah community? And I know it's early, we're only a few hours into this story, but what has been the reaction in the Savannah community after this shooting this morning?
We're shocked. We're absolutely shocked about what is going on. And then as the information goes out, of course, we are thinking about these soldiers that protect us around the world and are victimized at home. We want more information, obviously. We think that we have some of the best medical professionals, and we know that some of the injured have been taken to our local medical facilities in Savannah. So we continue to pray and hope and seek answers.
And how is the city of Savannah here that you lead rallying around Fort Stewart now? I know that there's already an operational assistance that you're providing. What we can see in the images on the screen is that it looks like some of your Savannah police officers have escorted some of these ambulances to Memorial Hospital, but also how is the city of Savannah stepping in to assist here?
We're all in this together. I spoke with the lieutenant colonel upon this happening while he was still locked down. I spoke with the Liberty County chairman. I spoke with the mayor of Hinesville. I've offered whatever support we can give them. We're all one community. And the least we can do is to be able to be of support of those individuals that support us every day in theaters around the world.
And Mayor, you say you spoke to a lieutenant colonel at that base, a leader at that base, as this lockdown was still going on. What was that conversation like? What did he tell you?
He was very calm, but very factual. He wanted to make sure we understood what was going on as, from his vantage point. We are partners every day anyway. And so he wanted us to be aware. And again, I offered whatever support that we could give him during this time.
And Mayor, I just want to put up on our screen here as you and I speak some of the reactions that have been coming in from leaders across the country. And first, I want to go to Raphael Warnock, your senator of the great state of Georgia there. He says, quote, "I'm heartbroken to see the news of an active shooter incident at Fort Stewart today. I'm monitoring the situation closely and join all Georgia families, or all of Georgia rather, as we pray for the safety of our service member, staff, and their families." And then one more statement that I do want to put up on your screen here that we have from Governor Brian Kemp of your state. He says, quote, "As we remain in close contact with law enforcement on the ground, Marty, who is the First Lady of Georgia, the girls, and I are saddened by today's tragedy at Fort Stewart. We are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers, and we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same." Mayor, you have also put out your own statement here. You've said that you're extending prayers and assistance to our friends at Fort Stewart. It is early here, of course, but describe to us the impact you believe that something like this is going to have on your community, given the fact that, as we've been talking about over the course of this interview, Fort Stewart is so ingrained in the Savannah community. What is this going to look like long term?
Well, we are very resilient people. Fort Stewart and Hunter are the home of the largest infantry division east of the Mississippi. We call them dog-faced soldiers. They face adversity, but as a community, we need some answers. We need to understand what occurred. We need to understand what was in the mind of the individual who did this. And so that information will come out. In the meantime, we have to not only be in prayer for, but in support of the families of these individuals that were victimized. And so first things are first, but all things will eventually come.
Van Johnson of the great city of Savannah, Georgia, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Bam. So that's the mayor. I mean, he seemed pretty serious. We do have a CNN clip. I don't know if I want to play it just because copyright, but oh, we got more witness updates. So let's get into some of these. We got a retired colonel speaking on this situation as well. So we'll get some people who were actually at the scene or footage from the scene here.
Injured after a shooting this morning on Fort Stewart in Hinesville.
3rd Infantry Division Commanding General John Lubis says the shooting or shooter is in military custody and there is no threat to the community.
We have some cell phone video from Fort Stewart at the time of the shooting that was posted to TikTok. You can see soldiers there rushing to find shelter as the post went on lockdown.
We have crews in Hinesville and Savannah where the wounded soldiers have been taken for treatment. We begin our coverage now, team coverage with WSAV's Sarah Smith at Fort Stewart.
Yeah, Tina and Ben, we're learning more about that shooter and the victim. So we're told that shooter is 28-year-old Quornelius Radford.
And guys, if you are watching on X, we have a lot of live viewers on X, 209 live viewers on X. If you're watching on X, make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, Black Gen Z Mindset, Black Gen Z Mindset. Go to the YouTube channel and, for a better viewing experience.
We do have a picture of him now. He is a sergeant here, and he is with the 2nd Armored Brigade Combat Team. He has ties to Florida and has been assigned to Fort Stewart since 2022. We also learned he has no previous combat deployments, has been interviewed, and he is awaiting charges. Now, he is an active duty soldier. We want to remind you of that. An active duty soldier here at Fort Stewart, shooting 5 of his fellow soldiers. It happened at their place of work, so all of them were co-workers. We did learn that he was arrested locally for a DUI. We're still working to learn some more of those details, and we're unsure if that is related to what took place today. Now, we did also learn this was not a military weapon, and this wasn't related to any training on base. This was his personal weapon. Commanding General John Lubis telling the media a little bit about that situation and security.
Very confident in the security of this installation. We've got a great partnership with local law enforcement. As you can see here at our gates, we have armed guards in protective equipment. This one's a bit difficult. and we're going to have to determine how he was able to get a handgun to his place of duty.
Once again, still an ongoing investigation here on Fort Stewart, and we do have news about those victims. 3 of the 5 did require surgery, but all are in stable condition. Of course, we have several crews out, and I know another crew is at Memorial Hospital, so she'll bring you some more information on that. But of course, officials aren't speculating on Radford's motives at this time. For now, live right outside Fort Stewart Army Base, I'm Sarah Smith, WSAV News 3, on your side.
Sarah, thank you. Officials both in our area and across the state are responding to the shooting. Georgia Governor Brian Kemp releasing a statement earlier today saying we are keeping the victims, their families, and all those who answer the call to serve in our hearts and prayers. And we ask that Georgians everywhere do the same. Hinesville Mayor Carl Riles said in a statement that Fort Stewart is more than a military installation. It is a vital part of Hinesville. The men and women who serve there are our neighbors, our friends, and family. Their safety and well-being matter deeply to us. He finished his statement by saying that the city would stand with Fort Stewart both in times of strength and sorrow.
Fort Stewart is home to hundreds of soldiers and their families, all of whom were placed under lockdown during the shooting. WSAV's Isabella Baez spoke to witnesses as she is joining us with what they've said to her as she shares their stories.
That's right, Tina, Ben. News of a shooting on the military post sent a shockwave throughout this community. Families, schools, and businesses in the area were told to stay indoors or even put on a lockdown. For a period of time, everyone was just waiting, wondering, and praying for the best. I spoke to a local business manager who is from the area and has been here for years. She works right around the corner from the main gate of Fort Stewart. And she said she took her own precautions by staying aware of everyone entering her store, making sure her and her employees were safe, as this is something she hasn't really seen before.
Crazy. So first of all, when you hear the sirens, we always look out the window. Then all of a sudden you hear more sirens and then more sirens, and then we started counting them. So then we started looking across the street and walked up to the sidewalk, and it was just chaotic. They had the traffic stop. They had cops from all over coming in, people pulling over to the side. It's scary. It's really scary because you just don't know what someone's going through or what's going on. You know?
I spoke to a woman who was in Fort Stewart in a classroom at the time of the incident. She told me her first thought was the safety of others. We hear more from her at News 3 at 6. Reporting in Richmond Hill, I'm Isabella Baez, WSAV News 3, on your side.
Isabella, thank you. Some of the injured soldiers were able to be treated on the post, but several had to be transferred to Memorial Health here in Savannah. And that is where we find WSAV's Christine Quayle, who is working to learn more about their conditions.
Yes, Ben. So it's been a really distinct air of anticipation here today at Memorial for the majority of the day. To kind of give you a little bit of a recap, we had one ambulance come here earlier, and the second arrived just a few hours later, escorted by GSP, SPD, Chatham County Police. And normally for such severe injuries, because we're here at Memorial, because this is the only level 1 trauma center in the area where people can be brought for really severe and serious injuries. So normally people would be transported by helicopter because we're about 45 minutes away from Fort Stewart here. But because of the weather, they had to be brought by ambulance. So what you're seeing now is some video of when the ambulance brought that second person in earlier. We do know that all of the people are in stable, all of those that were injured in the shooting in stable condition as of now, but we're working to learn some specifics. We did talk to a trauma surgeon here at Memorial about their operations and their readiness just a couple of hours ago. And they did say that, it's a little bit different when it comes to treating military personnel because you have more people involved, but also there's more people who are, willing to be there for them and who are advocating for them.
More people to talk to, right? The commanders are allowed to ask some details that like other, if your boss came and asked the stuff we couldn't tell you there. So we have to talk to multi-level people. We also get a great deal of support. They all come in with a buddy. So there's always somebody there with them, which is real touching for us. But yeah, we really care about our military.
And you hear that surgeon even getting a little bit choked up about all of this, because this is something big for the whole community, whether you're in Savannah, whether you're in Hinesville, whether you're in any of the surrounding areas. Many people have those who they love and people who work and live around the base, and they're all wondering about their safety and the safety of their loved ones, wanting to get updates on their conditions. You know, even just in a couple of moments ago, Chatham County Sheriff pulling up to the scene here, because this is really, you know, a joint effort here. So we're working to learn more exactly about what the conditions are, besides that they're stable, of the people who are here at Memorial, and then also the 3 that are being treated at Wynn on Fort Stewart. I'll send it back to you guys for now. Christine Quayle, WSAV News 3, on your side.
So we don't have a motive yet, Liberty Twitcher, and thank you for your comment here. But we don't have a motive yet. We're still trying to figure it out. Let's see. We got questions about base security. We've also got the briefing from the other military officials that we've pretty much already seen that. So we'll go to CNN's reporting on it. They got Jake Tapper talking about it. I'm a little skeptical about, doing the little CNN scene, but, forget it. It is what it is. We'll try and fair use it out. Fair use, fair use.
We are following the breaking news of the 5 soldiers shot today at Fort Stewart in southeastern Georgia, an Army base about 40 miles outside Savannah, a community of more than 10,000 people. All 5 victims right now are in the hospital, but Fort Stewart officials shared this afternoon that all 5 are in stable condition and all 5 are expected to recover, thankfully. Officials identified the suspected shooter as 28-year-old U.S. Army Sergeant Quornelius Radford, whom they say opened fire at his place of work with a personal weapon.
Soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
That was Brigadier General John Lubis at Fort Stewart. Here's what else we know about how exactly the events unfolded this morning. Just before 11 a.m., we're told law enforcement was dispatched to the possible shooting at Fort Stewart. 8 minutes later, at 11:04, the base was locked down. At 11:09, emergency personnel were sent in to treat at least 5 soldiers shot. They were treated on the base before being sent to the hospitals. By 11:35 a.m., the shooter had been apprehended. 35 minutes later, the lockdown on the main containment area was lifted. I want to bring in CNN's Isabel Rosales. And Isabel, where is the suspect right now, and what do we know about him?
Jake, good evening. He is in pre-trial confinement awaiting a charging decision. This is according to the general there of the base. He's awaiting that charging decision by the Office of the Special Trial Counsel. He has also been interviewed, by the Army Criminal Investigation Division, although it's not clear if he's actually talking to military investigators, if he's being cooperative. Now, we know that he is an active duty soldier assigned to Fort Stewart's 2nd Brigade Combat Team. He is from Jacksonville, Florida, and we know from the Army that he joined back in January of 2018 as an automated logistical specialist. And back in May, he was arrested during a traffic stop that happened off base, and that was for driving under the influence. Now, we heard from the Brigadier General there that the suspected shooter's chain of command was not aware of this DUI, of this arrest, until the shooting happened, and they started to look up his information in the law enforcement database. The general also mentioned that Radford has no combat history, nor did he have any behavioral background that they were aware of. Now, as you mentioned, Jake, this is a workplace shooting. He knew these people. These were his colleagues. Critical here, the general mentioned that this was a personal gun that he brought in. So this was not a military weapon that was used in this shooting. This was his own personal gun. They're investigating how he got that onto base.
And Isabel, the general said that luckily all the soldiers
Oh, sorry. They said I was muted. My bad.
that have been shot are expected to recover. How are they doing? What more do we know about their condition, if anything?
Yeah, it's such great.
So maybe he crashed out over the DUI. They're saying he had a DUI offense, so that could have caused his visceral reaction. But guys, make sure if you're watching on another platform besides YouTube, make sure you go to the YouTube Black Gen Z Mindset. Go to YouTube Black Gen Z Mindset. Make sure you guys go subscribe. I got 200 people in the building from my Twitter or X account. So make sure you go to the YouTube channel Black Gen Z Mindset. So for a better viewing experience, you can interact with the chat, send a super chat, PayPal, Cash App, or any type of donation. Subscribe to the Patreon, guys. The Patreon, we're trying to get that thing up so we don't have to rely on YouTube's monetization just in case they want to play. But yeah, you already know what it is, man. We are going to continue to bring you this hard-hitting news because these super gremlins are on demon time.
Great news that we heard in the midst of all of this, that the 5 soldiers who were shot, they are in stable condition. They're expected to recover. So this was a total of 5 soldiers. 3 out of the 5 required surgery. 2 of them have been moved over to a Trauma 1 center in Savannah. But again, all of them are expected to survive. They'll be okay.
Isabel Rosales, thanks so much. Let's discuss this with CNN security correspondent Josh Campbell, as well as Jason Armstrong, the former police chief of Ferguson, Missouri. Josh, are there rules about what weapons you're allowed to bring with you on an Army base?
Yeah, firearms are highly regulated. In fact, but for a select group, including law enforcement, you're essentially unable to lawfully carry a firearm on a military base. And certain installations, including
That's another charge.
This one here, Fort Stewart, if a soldier brings a personal firearm on base, it has to be registered with the installation and then securely stored. You can't just carry it around with you around the base. Of course, that appears to be one of the weakest links here, is that because the individual had authorized access to the base, he was then able to come on and bring that without being searched. I know there will be people who say, well, why don't you search every vehicle before they actually get on the installation? For those who have been to a military base, particularly during rush hour, I mean, you have cars lined up for blocks sometimes. So I don't think that's actually realistic. That's just the threat here potentially. And that's why the military employs other means to try to detect insider threats, Jake.
Chief Armstrong, we know that the suspect's in custody and that he was tackled and subdued by soldiers. What does this tell you about how this might have played out?
What it tells me is the individuals that were involved, you know, they were all in the same area. Potentially, they all worked together. And so whatever led this individual to make the decision to pull the weapon out and to start just shooting individuals, one, it was either related to an altercation or something that was sparked in the moment. And this was an act that was just in the moment, or it was something where this individual had a long-standing challenge or problem with somebody there, and things escalated to where they felt the need to bring a weapon into that space and wanted to carry this out.
And Josh, you're still an officer in the military reserve. What does the U.S. military do to try to prevent and stop incidents like these? Obviously, this is not as bad as the Fort Hood shooting we all remember from years ago, but it could have really, I mean, it's bad enough, but it could have even been much worse.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but for those soldiers subduing this person, you can only imagine how worse this could have been. To your question about what the military does, there's physical security. Anyone who goes up to a base, you roll up at the ACP, the access control point. You have military police that are there controlling access. But again, we're talking about an individual who had authorized access to be on the base. And that's why the military regularly trains people and reinforces the training on trying to look for warning signs about potential insider threats. And that includes, you know, you have a colleague, a friend in the military, you start to notice that there's something off about them. Maybe they're having, you know, different struggles financially or personally. And the goal with that training is to sensitize people that, look, you don't just sit on that information, which is why it's going to be very interesting and important here for investigators with Army CID to actually interview people in the shooter's orbit, his friends, his colleagues, any of the victims, to determine whether or not, you know, they had some type of a beef with him. And so, again, that's what they try to sensitize the soldiers to, that, look, it's incumbent on everyone. If you see someone who is struggling, to speak up, the goal being to try to prevent something like this.
Chief Armstrong, what kind of information do you think law enforcement is working to get out of the suspect right now?
The number one question that they're trying to answer is, why did this happen and how did it happen? Whenever you have an incident like this, there are going to be a lot of questions that people on the base and people in our community are going to want answers to. And you're trying to figure out what contributed to this, because the number one thing that you want to do on the other side of it is to try to ensure that this doesn't happen again. So they're going to be looking at how this happened, how he got the weapon in there, why the checks and balances that they had in place failed in this instance, so they can put things in place to try to prevent this from happening again.
And Josh, while the motive remains unclear and under investigation, I'm curious your thoughts as to how investigators are working to figure that out right now. Obviously, they're interrogating the suspect. Beyond that, what else?
Yeah, we're not talking about someone just firing upon one person. And so, it appears this could have been, indiscriminate firing. So there will be that question. What was the motivation? Was this some type of...
Yeah, and we still don't have a motive here, guys. A lot of speculation, a lot of people saying an inner feud with his fellow service members, colleagues, potentially terrorist attack. No casualties, though, so that's good. But tragedy definitely was prevented here at Fort Stewart.
A situation between this individual and a group? Were there other stressors that this person was then acting upon? It's interesting. The FBI has gone back and studied past mass shooters, the famed FBI profilers. They found certain commonalities, and that is that most people in these situations, they don't just snap one day and then start to engage in violence, but they go along this pathway and become more and more working toward that violent effort. And a lot of times in most of these situations, the profilers have found they do exhibit those warning signs. And so that will be what is critical here to try to determine what was the shooter going through in his life that then, resulted in this. Interestingly, our colleague John Miller reported that back in May, the suspect was arrested by local law enforcement, it appears off base, for driving while under the influence. It appears that information did not actually get to the military because a brigadier general who spoke just a short time ago said that they weren't aware of that past contact. And so there was this question, were there things that were spiraling in his life, to include now running up against the U.S. criminal justice system? All those big questions for investigators as they try to piece together the why.
Well, you mentioned the U.S. criminal justice system, Josh, and I'm wondering on that. I mean, obviously the military has its own uniform code of justice. Yeah. Is he ultimately just going to be handed over to local law enforcement, whether the sheriff's department or the police department? Or is there some way that the military will handle this?
Yeah, and when I said that, I meant the DUI off base would be handled by the regular U.S. criminal justice system. But he's now in the military justice system, which falls under what they call the Uniform Code of Military Justice. The military has its own justice department and its own prosecutors, its own courts, for example. And that is where he will be likely, I assume he will be tried here, obviously for attempted murder, it appears. And, obviously the military can convict people and can fine people just like the U.S. Justice Department could as well. And so he certainly faces very, very serious consequences.
So boom, we got updates from CNN there when they were doing their live coverage. Let's see if we can actually get some real witness testimony. In the meantime, we'll play this video where they're raising questions about the safety on these bases.
So I want to bring in our senior national security correspondent, Courtney Cuby. She's at the Pentagon tonight. Courtney, one thing that was interesting was that the general there said that other soldiers intervened and they took down their fellow soldier, essentially making sure he could not shoot or harm anyone else on the base. Obviously, these people are trained for combat, but this had to be a surprising and shocking incident for those soldiers on that base.
Yeah, Tom, I completely zeroed in on that part of the press conference as well. The fact that fellow soldiers actually subdued this soldier as he was shooting at what we just learned were his fellow soldiers in his same unit at his place of work. They subdued him, they took him down, and they held on to him until local law or until the law enforcement could show up and put him in what we now learn is a pretrial confinement. There were a few other things that really stood out to me here, Tom, from General Lubis. Number one, the soldier, a sergeant, he's assigned to a sustainment company as part of the 2nd Brigade combat team there at Fort Stewart. Basically, that means he does logistic support, everything from, basic logistics that you think of to financial, even personnel issues. But the general making a point that the individuals, this was his place of work, and the individuals who he targeted here were his fellow soldiers in his unit. That was very telling to me. Also, what you were just talking about with Jesse here, the idea of this being his personal handgun. One thing to remember, when a soldier checks in on one of these bases, unless you need your military issued weapon as part of your job, so something like a military police officer, there are procedures for what you're supposed to do with your military issued weapon. That would generally be checking it into an armory, putting it in some place, in some sort of a safekeeping. But if you are a soldier assigned to that base, or frankly, even a civilian, a contractor, someone who has access to the base, generally you can get on the base in your vehicle or whatever it is without being checked. Even though it's not supposed to happen, this incident alone just shows how it is easy in some cases for people to get a weapon onto base without it being detected. In this case, as we learned from General Lubis, the 5 soldiers who were shot here or were injured here are in stable condition. 2 of them were transported to a local facility for further care. Most likely that was because Wynn Army Community Hospital there on base, yes, it can handle a lot. But if you're talking about a more extensive surgery, a more extensive injuries, they might, it wouldn't surprise me if they would move them to another hospital nearby that might have a little bit more extensive capability and might have more specialized care for someone with that sort of care. The other things that really stood out to me here, Jesse mentioned the DUI. It appears that the soldier did not actually notify his command of that. But the general said that at this point, they are not aware of any other behavioral issues or other disciplinary issues with this soldier. They're looking into it still. And then, of course, just one thing that tends to come up when we have.
And, you know, they drink a lot on these bases. There's local bars around these bases, you know, to keep morale high. But sometimes it can definitely backfire. So maybe that could be a factor in it all. But yeah, very scary case here.
These sorts of incidents, Tom, they are not aware of any combat deployments that the sergeant had.
Courtney, briefly before you go, they mentioned he is in containment right now awaiting charges. Will this be a military trial or will there be criminal charges from that county?
So officials believe at this point this is probably going to live in the military court of justice, and that's because it involves an active duty soldier. It involves soldiers as the victim. It was on a base, but I wouldn't discount the possibility that it could, for one reason or another, move off. But again, at this point, they believe that he will be held in his pretrial confinement there for some period of time. Most likely, he will be moved to another more secure or stable facility off of Fort Stewart, and then it appears at this point he is going to be tried in the military court of justice.
We thank you for watching. And
yeah, I mean, hopefully they stick it to him because, I mean, this guy's clearly very, very dangerous and doesn't really care about even the people that he works with. So very scary situation here.
We want to get an inside look at the workings of Fort Stewart, and especially in an emergency like this. We turn now to retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Hunter. He was with the 3rd ID for a number of years. And Lieutenant Colonel Hunter, just sort of to start, when an emergency like this happens, you know, there's protocols in place, I'm sure, but a lot of that goes out the window until you find out what's happening, I would assume.
Yeah, exactly. You know, what's going to happen is that the unit and the chain of command is going to make sure that the families and the soldiers are taken care of. In order to soldier, you gotta know that you're cared for, and I know that they're gonna look after those soldiers and look after those families and make sure that they're well taken care of.
Lieutenant Colonel, I just want to ask you about this situation as it unfolded at Fort Stewart this morning. Active shooter there just before 11 o'clock, and the Brigadier General John Lubis, the commanding general of the 3rd ID, has given us clear confirmation of the person responsible, an active duty soldier by the name of Quornelius Radford. And the soldiers, his fellow soldiers, in a building with him this morning, and they tackle him after the shooting occurred and subdued him. In a situation like this, from the video that we've seen, there was quite a quietness. It appeared to be a mess hall. We're not 100% sure, but these soldiers are trained and prepared for situations like this, correct?
Well, yeah. So soldiers are going to take care of soldiers, and soldiers are going to do what they need to do in order to make sure that the units is safe. And so, yes, I'm sure that they took the necessary procedures and matters at hand to ensure that the situation was under control.
And Colonel Hunter, the general, was talking about the fact that this was a personal weapon that this gentleman brought in, that he was able to get through there. I know the weapons policy. Talk to me a little bit about the weapons policy at Fort Stewart, and maybe you're surprised that someone could get a personal weapon through the secure process?
Well, it was my experience when I was on active duty for a number of years that the firearms, personally owned firearms, would have to be secured in secure facilities. So not even allowed inside the residencies of soldiers on post.
Was it easy to get a personal weapon through? Would you believe that it would be simple to do something like that?
I would not venture to do that. I know that anytime you come through the gate, you are subject to be searched. So I would not venture to do it.
Lieutenant Colonel Hunter, before we wrap up with you, I'm just curious about the next step in a situation like this as this investigation proceeds.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that question, please?
Yes, what would the investigation as it continues now, what would the next step be? We know that Quornelius Radford is in military custody at this time. We do know that the soldiers are in stable condition.
Yeah, so I think at this point, the chain of command is going to work with the Criminal Investigation Division to make sure that all of the necessary pieces of the investigation is done to standard. And then I'm sure that you're now going to be looking toward chaplains and all of the support agencies to come together to support the soldiers of the unit and also the families.
Well, and you commanded soldiers right there. Real quick, what would be your sense, how hard that's going to be for that entire brigade and especially the people that were around there to get through it? And what would you have to tell those kind of people if they were under your command?
I would tell them to make sure that, if you are struggling, you need help, then to, speak about it, talk about it, and get the help that you need.
All right, retired Lieutenant Colonel Scott Hunter, we certainly thank you for your time this evening, giving us insight on what has been an unfortunate situation.
So there you have it. We got a colonel, lieutenant colonel, speaking on the situation. It looks like CNN might have uncovered maybe a tad bit of the motive. So
Mark Morales about this new information that apparently the suspect had a beef with a fellow coworker and showed up with a weapon, opened fire on that coworker, and then shot 4 others. And of course, we've learned about how other soldiers jumped in to subdue him. He was taken into custody very quickly. Right now, the base is back to normal operations coming from the standpoint of all the gates back here open. This place is massive. As someone who's been in this area at this base several times before, I can tell you this is like a mini city here. It's one of the largest bases, of course, across from the Mississippi, and people know this for how much work this base does across the world. But we do know the soldiers who were injured in this suffered those injuries. We know they will survive. 3 needed surgery. But listen to the general talk about what happened here today and how soldiers jumped in to help out.
Soldiers in the area that witnessed the shooting immediately and without hesitation tackled the soldier, subdued him, that allowed law enforcement to then take him into custody.
So, Jake, I've been able to talk to a couple soldiers through text message, and they were able to tell me, look, they were shocked by this. This was put on lockdown. They were worried about what was going on. We do know apparently this soldier bought this weapon back in May in Florida. I know several federal agents have been trying to track down where this gun originated from, but we now know through that CNN reporting from Mark Morales that they were able to track this gun back to the purchase in Florida in May, and there was some disagreement at work, and then he showed up with that gun and opened fire. Hopefully to get more information about the motive. We know the suspect is now in military custody. A lot of times, Jake, when we talk about cases like this, you think about a first court appearance. That's something that we will probably not see in terms of him being held in front of the camera and facing a judge. So we'll have to see what he faces. But also the good news here, even after 2 soldiers had to be moved to Savannah to get that expert trauma 1 level care, that all the soldiers involved in this should survive. So people are in shock here, especially in the small community that surrounds this area. But at the same time, this is going to turn out with those soldiers being able to make it through this. Jake?
Ryan, can you talk about any of the major questions investigators are still seeking answers to?
Well, I think one of the things that they'll be focused on is, one, his preparation in terms of bringing that gun onto the base and showing up at that facility. There's been a lot of question about what happened preceding that shooting. So, of course, they'll analyze the gun. They'll see what happened. There's also been that conversation about him being pulled over for DUI. So I'm sure they'll be scrubbing through his history to figure out exactly what started this sort of cascading events that may have led to this shooting, and what could make someone so angry enough to show up to work with a weapon to shoot a coworker. Again, this is a large footprint area. Everything around here is touched by this military base. Even on the way in here, it really shocks you in terms of all the firepower that you see here. But at the same time, weapons are usually under control in this area. So, Jake, just a lot of questions about how this happened and what was his motivation, even after we know it was a beef.
Yeah, Ryan Young at Fort Stewart. Thanks so much. Let's bring in Donnell Harvin. He's the former chief of Homeland Security and Intelligence for the D.C. government. Also with us, Darren Porcher, former NYPD lieutenant. Donnell, what do you make of these new details that the suspect had a disagreement or a beef with one coworker the day before, and then allegedly brought a gun to the workplace today?
Jake, this isn't that dissimilar from other workplace violence we've seen in other settings. I think what's so shocking is that it happens on a tightly secured military base. I'll also add that the Department of Defense, after the Navy Yard shooting, which you recall in DC, implemented a very robust program to detect what we call insider threats. These threats that emanate from inside your organizations, in this particular case, the DoD, are extremely hard to detect, extremely hard to interdict and deter. And so they'll be looking at that, I'm sure, at the Pentagon over the next days and weeks on how they could have perhaps prevented this.
Darren, what do you think investigators are looking into right now?
Well, you're going to have CID, Criminal Investigations Division of the Army, that's going to investigate this. I'm a former executive officer in the Army, so on many occasions I've introduced discipline against soldiers. The investigators are going to sit down with everyone that worked in that workplace area. He was a logistics specialist, so I take it he worked in a warehouse facility. So all of those individuals are going to be interviewed. But what's really interesting about this is there was a 40-minute gap from the time when the shooting started to when the shooter was, quote unquote, taken into custody, which is kind of strange because there were people that were in that workplace that were able to take him.
I mean, it might have taken 40 minutes to really subdue him and hem him up
down and I want to say neutralize him pending the arrival of law enforcement. But once again, it's going to be a contingent of various interviews as to what the dispute was, and did anyone have information that revealed there was a propensity for him to come back and introduce violence in the workplace.
Donnell, is it odd that the suspect's chain of command did not know about his recent DUI? Is that something that the local law enforcement would automatically notify the military about, or the military would be alerted about in some way?
I mean, not necessarily if you don't disclose to the law enforcement what your occupation is, but I will tell you that once again, this is an aspect that came out of the after action report from the Navy Yard shooting. There was a lot of red flags with that individual shooter who took the lives of 12 people rather, at the Navy Yard that day. And there was a whole host of things, interactions with law enforcement that weren't picked up. And so after that, the Department of Defense started doing more regular background checks. All these individuals who are on bases, whether they're uniformed or not, go through a rigorous background check process. But what they found is that once you go through that initial process, they weren't doing follow-ups. And so those follow-ups that have been in place now are there to pick up things that happen just like this. And hopefully they'll look at that and see if that would have triggered some follow-up investigation in this individual. But once again, Jake, unless he told somebody or he made a threat, it's really, really hard to interdict and stop somebody who's that determined to hurt somebody at their workplace.
Darren, do you think other U.S. military installations need to be doing security reviews in the wake of this shooting, maybe just to fend off any copycats, or maybe there are lessons to be learned?
There's going to be an after action review that's going to be quite telling to other military bases, be it the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Marines. And that information would be extracted to make a more robust security component in any base. But what's interesting about this is you, as an active duty soldier, you have an access badge that affords you the ability to get on base. Those individuals that have access badges are not searched as they enter the base. Bear in mind, this was a personal weapon that he came on base with. And we have to trust our soldiers, because these are the individuals that we arm in combat to protect and defend the democracy of the United States abroad. So we're just not going to search them when they come on base. And this was one of these things that more so slipped through the cracks. But I agree that we need to do a more robust job in terms of creating that security matrix on base.
All right, Darren Porcher and Danelle Harvin, thanks to both of you. Unfortunately, this is not the first time a deadly shooting took place on a U.S. military base. CNN's Brian Todd joins us now. Brian?
Well, Jake, Brigadier General John Lubis today, he's the commander of the 3rd Infantry Division at Fort Stewart. He told reporters this afternoon that other soldiers in the area who witnessed this shooting, in his words, quote, immediately and without hesitation, tackled the alleged shooter. And General Lubis said, without a doubt, that prevented more casualties. But there have been other mass shootings at U.S. military bases where some worst-case scenarios did, in fact, unfold. November 5th, 2009, a U.S. Army major and psychiatrist at Fort Hood, Texas. He shot more than 40 people. He killed 13 of them. He was shooting his fellow soldiers at a processing center on the base at Fort Hood. Prosecutors said the shooter, an American-born Muslim, underwent a progressive radicalization that had led to that massacre. That shooter was convicted and sentenced to death. He is currently being held at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas. This remains the deadliest shooting ever on a U.S. military base, that shooting at Fort Hood on 2009. Now, on December 16th, 2013, a defense contract worker and former Navy reservist killed 12 people at the Navy Yard right here in Washington, D.C. At least 8 other people were injured in that shooting. The shooter was then killed in a gun battle with police. Subsequent investigations found that the shooter had suffered mental health problems, but despite those issues, he still held on to a security clearance with the Navy, allowing him access to that base. Jake, I remember you and I both covered that shooting, and that whole issue with his access and the clearance was a big deal at the time. Now, on April 2nd, 2014, another shooting, we'll just get to that one, that was it, another shooting at Fort Hood in Texas. A soldier opened fire on fellow service members, killing 3 people, wounding more than a dozen before he killed himself. That shooting actually played out in multiple buildings at the base on Fort Hood as the shooter moved around. That was before he was engaged by military police. And on December 6th, 2019, an aviation student from Saudi Arabia opened fire in a classroom at Naval Air Station Pensacola in Florida. He killed 3 people and injured another dozen people, including 2 sheriff's deputies. The shooter was killed at the scene by deputies. Investigations later revealed that the shooter had self-radicalized and had been in contact with al-Qaeda operatives in the years prior to the shooting. Jake, in all of these incidents, including today's shooting at Fort Stewart, one common thread: the shooters all had access to the bases in question. As for the weapon, well, today General Lubis said the Fort Stewart shooter had used his own weapon, a handgun, not a military-issued weapon. But Jake, horrible precedents for the shooting today, thankfully.
Wow. So apparently he had a disagreement with a coworker that caused him to crash out. 5 people shot. 5 people shot and injured. No casualties. So thank God for that. But I mean, that's pretty much the story. an hour and a half in. We covered everything that we needed to. So I appreciate everybody for joining the stream. If you are watching on another platform, make sure you come over to the YouTube channel at Black Gen Z Mindset. Come to the YouTube channel, check it out. We are very consistent on this YouTube channel. We'll still continue to stream on the other platforms that you guys are watching on. But the YouTube channel is exactly where I need you guys to be, just so that we can keep this channel churning into the right direction. So if you are watching on YouTube, y'all know what to do. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, comment immediately after the live stream ends. That helps with the algorithm. Like the video right now. You can leave your comment right now if you want to. Yeah, man, we got Quornelius with a Q. Quornelius Radford with a Q. He's in custody, awaiting his military trial. So going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We're not going to get a public view of it because it's going to be handled by the military, but hopefully they, they bring down some very, very strict and substantial charges against this guy. Or, I don't know, maybe they'll convert him to an asset. Sometimes they like to convert these crazy ass shooters and stuff into, he hasn't seen any combat, but you never know, man. Sometimes they convert these dudes to I don't know, but y'all know these intelligence and military work together. And then he's showing sociopathic, psychopathic tendencies. So maybe they'll take his profile and use it, or maybe they won't. Maybe they'll throw the book at him. Who knows? But we'll definitely be keeping up with this story. I'm just throwing out conspiracy theories at this point, but you already know what it is, man. It is the Black Gen Z Mindset, aka BGZM News 17, aka Quornelius Jackson, and we are going to send it off to Quornelius Jackson to take us away and end the stream. Appreciate everybody for joining the stream. Make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe, leave a comment immediately after the video. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Black Gen Z Mindset. Again, Black Gen Z Mindset. And you already know, man, stay safe, because these super gremlins are on demon time.
I'm here on the corner of MLK and Frederick Douglass, where a shooting just took place. And as you can see, it's a pretty rough area. So I'm basically risking my life reporting on this madness. So make sure you do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Like the video, hell, share the video. And make sure you go ahead and leave a comment down in the comments section to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this son violence in the streets. I'm Quornelius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17. I'm here on the corner of MLK and Medgar Evers, and it's a very tranquil scene compared to just a couple hours ago where a drive-by shooting just took place. Excuse me. I'm getting live updates as we speak. I've just been updated to the amount of casualties from this drive-by shooting, and I'm getting reports that 2 people were actually declared deceased and 27 others were shot and injured but are in stable condition. And although we must pray for the families of the fallen, we must also praise God for the aim of the super gremlin. If you want to know more about the victims of this crime, make sure you add BGZM News 17 on Patreon at www.patreon.com/BlackGenZMindset. Also, don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel, and comment on the video to continue the discussion on how we can find solutions to all this son violence in the streets. For more hard-hitting news coverage from the community, by the community, I'm Quornelius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia, BGZM News 17.
And cut.
All right, dog. Let's get the out of here before these niggas come back.
Whoa. Yo.
Whoa.
Ain't that nigga J.
Nah, that ain't me. That ain't me.
He just went live
That
with
ain't
that
me.
funky ass suit on.
That's that nigga. That's not me.
Hey, get that nigga.
Quornelius Jackson, here live, reporting from Atlanta, Georgia. Pray for me.
What's good, Shadow Realm?
It's your boy Quornelius Jackson, and y'all already know I'm demonetized and shadow banned in this bitch. So if you want to contribute, go to the Cash App, the PayPal, the GoFundMe, or join the Patreon. Also, don't forget to visit the merch store for all your favorite BGZM News 17 gear, including our exclusive Trump is a Blood t-shirt. Go fast before they sell out. They are already flying off the shelves, no cap. And remember, these super gremlins are on demon time.
Gang violence and other kind of violence.